Greetings. Hope this finds you well. So, a pretty enlightening and informative video I came across yesterday on Twitter by BT News or Breakthrough News, I believe, documenting how the state of Israel is one of the most racist countries in the world. You see that through the rhetoric of the Israeli settlers, if you're paying attention, and then also through law as well. It's actually codified their racism as well as the views of the Israeli settlers in that country. Not all of them. Again, there is a big chunk of people there standing up and fighting back, but this is pretty entrenched as well. So here we go.
Countries in the world. While you'll never hear anyone in the mainstream media say this is actually one of the most important things you need to understand if you want to know what's happening right now. From its inception, the whole idea of Israel as a country was based on racism. Israel was conceived as a Jewish state, and while there's nothing wrong in principle with Jews having a homeland, the problem is that they insisted that that homeland had to be in Palestine.
And that already obviously belonged to the Palestinians, hence why it was called Palestine, right?
Which already belonged to someone, the Palestinians. The slogan of Israel's founders was a land for a people without a land. But deep down, they all knew that the only way to have a Jewish majority in Palestine, an Arab country, was to
get rid of the Arabs, which is what they're still trying to do,
expel the Arabs. One of the founders of Israel, Joseph Weitz, wrote, "There's no room in the country for both peoples. There's no way but to transfer the Arabs from here to neighboring countries." Israel was quite literally founded by expelling and massacring
750,000 in 1948 lost their homes or were expelled from their land. It was called, known as the Nakba, or the translated as the catastrophe.
Hundreds of thousands of Arabs in a years-long process called the Nakba. And when you found a country based on racial exclusion, you're gonna get a culture that fosters and celebrates racial exclusion. Because countries that commit terrible atrocities rarely acknowledge committing those atrocities. And the presence of Palestinians who remained in Palestine became a constant reminder, not only of the violence that founded Israel, but of the constantly looming threat that they might come back and try to reclaim their land. Every day you can find videos coming out of Israel showing Israelis calling for all Arabs to die, insulting the Prophet Muhammad, desecrating mosques, spitting on Christians, mocking and celebrating the murder of Palestinians, committing violent hate crimes against Palestinians, watching Gaza get carpet bombed from a cliffside.
That was in 2014 or 2018, that particular event there.
For entertainment. But don't just go off these anecdotes. Let's look at some of the polls. One poll found that 2/3 of Israeli teens believe Arabs to be less intelligent, uncultured, and violent. It also found that 50% of Israelis wouldn't live in the same building as Arabs, wouldn't befriend Arabs, wouldn't let their children befriend Arabs. And
the Israeli settlers there, they have to adopt this racist mindset, this racist worldview of the Palestinians and of Arabs in order to justify their continued repression and genocidal treatment towards them. They're seen as, less than human, basically.
Wouldn't let Arabs into their homes. Another poll found that 60% of Israeli Jews want segregation from Arabs. Another poll found that half of Israeli Jews agree with the statement, most Jews are better than most non-Jews because they were born Jews. The poll also found that 88% of Israeli Jews would be disturbed if their son befriended an Arab girl, and 90% would be disturbed if their daughter befriended an Arab boy. This poll found that about half of Israeli high schoolers don't think Arabs should have the right to vote. Another poll showed that almost half of Israeli Jews don't want Arabs teaching their kids. Not only are these views widely held in Israeli society, they're also represented in government, which codifies these sentiments into law. For example, Israel has a law that says if an Israeli marries a Palestinian, or someone from several other regional Arab states, that person isn't allowed to move in with said Israeli.
Think about that. There's a law there in Israel where if the Israeli settler marries a Palestinian or somebody from a neighboring Arab state, that person can't live with that Israeli settler.
This law was passed in 2003, but it's been renewed every single year since. Israel also doesn't allow interreligious marriage to be performed in the country, which is meant to deter Jews from marrying.
I thought it's a democracy. I thought it's a great bastion of democracy in the Middle East. Of course, that's just, more bullshit propaganda, but
non-Jews. In 2018, Israel passed the nation-state law, a law which has constitutional status, which says the right to exercise national self-determination, i.e. have rights, is the exclusive right of Jews, no one else. There's also the Nakba law, which makes it illegal to acknowledge the Nakba, the expulsion.
Look at that, literally erasing the history of the ethnic cleansing of 750 Palestinians from Palestine to create the settler colonial state of Israel.
Of Palestinians that were needed to found Israel. This would be like passing a law to make it illegal to talk about indigenous genocide or slavery in America.
Which some school districts and states are actually doing that. So it's not necessarily unique to that settler colonial project in Israel. The settler colonial state of U.S. does similar things, trying to erase its gruesome past and present.
America. There's also the admissions committee law, which basically allows towns to operate panels that deny applications for entry based on socio-cultural compatibility, which essentially just legalizes racist housing discrimination. In Israel, advocating genocide of Palestinians
which we had in the US in the past,
doesn't hurt your chances of holding a high position in government. And in fact, in many cases, it helps. In 2014, Israeli lawmaker Ayelet Shaked wrote an unhinged rant on Facebook, calling all Palestinians enemy combatants and saying their mothers should be killed for giving birth to, quote, little snakes. The next year, she was appointed Minister of Justice by Benjamin Netanyahu. Itamar Ben-Gvir, a lifelong admirer of Meir Kahane, an Arab exterminationist, a man who praised a Jewish settler who killed a Palestinian for throwing a rock at him, a man who was famously acquitted after being criminally charged for chanting death to Arabs, is Israel's current Minister of National Security. He's not some fringe.
When you see the same stuff, that same type of rhetoric right now, I believe it was the Israeli Minister of Defense, somebody high up in the military anyways, calling Palestinians human animals. You see Benjamin Netanyahu showing the videos of the Israeli military, the Air Force, carpet bombing, collectively punishing people in Gaza, celebrating war crimes. Like,
fringe figure either. He's one of the most popular politicians in Israel right now. In the last few days, Israel's been working hard to cast itself as the victim of hatred, the victim of terrorism, the victim of anti-Semitism, that they have no choice but to lay siege to Gaza. But underneath this carefully concocted victim complex is a racist, Jewish supremacist state that's been trying to finish the job that the Nakba started for decades. And really, this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. After all,
not if you actually pay attention and look at the historical context, right?
They're literally cutting off water and electricity to a city of 2 million people right now. Their generals talk openly about flattening Gaza and killing the animals, meaning Palestinians. It's obvious their goal is genocide.
Pretty enlightening video there. Shout out Breakthrough News. Shout out Kai Pritzker. Does really, really good work, and Breakthrough News in general. So thought that was worth sharing and commenting on. But I'm also going to show this video as well, because that, again, those polls say that, a good chunk of Israeli settlers have that attitude, but not all of them. So this Torah Judaism, Zionist Israeli police raid a synagogue belonging to Torah Jews in Jerusalem's anti-Zionist Jewish neighborhood, Mia Sharim. Jews reacted harshly to the Zionists. Zionism is the enemy of Judaism, Zionist usurpers are constantly attacking the Jewish community, which is what happened there. So there are, a fair amount of Jewish people in Israel who are against this Zionist project and who use their voice to speak up against that, and then they are attacked by these Zionist forces, which is just another example of that here. So pretty interesting. But there's no doubt that, as a whole, that Israel is a very racist society. It had to be founded on those principles, right, in order to justify the creation of this Zionist state where they were expelling all Arabs because they wanted to create a state that was only for Jewish people. In order to do that, you have to demonize the Palestinians, demonize the Arabs in order to justify ethnically cleansing Palestinians from their land. And so that's why you see that rhetoric by the politicians, by the Israeli settlers. That's why they hold those attitudes and opinions. They have to have that outlook and worldview. Otherwise, they couldn't be acting like how they did. They would have, you would think, a crisis of conscience, right? They have to have that type of mentality and outlook and racist worldview, in order to justify the inhumane, completely disgusting treatment of Palestinians to prop up this settler colonial apartheid regime. Very similar to the, rhetoric that the colonists used to attempt the genocide of the indigenous people here in the United States in this particular form of settler colonialism, right? From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.